Welcome to the Ourdadsstamps YouTube channel. My name's Pete West, and like a lot of people my age, I started collecting stamps as a child, encouraged by my father, who was an avid collector. 20 years ago I inherited his collection, and at the same time I also inherited my wife's dad's collection. Since then I've been buying and selling stamps through my online stores at Telegraph and eBay under the name Ourdadsstamps. And this has allowed me to grow the collection into what you see behind me. With these videos, I want to share some stories and information that I've learnt about stamps and stamp collecting. I hope you enjoy them, and if you do, don't forget to click on the like button and subscribe to get regular updates on new content. Hello. Before I start today's podcast, I'd just like to say that last week I was interviewed for the All About You podcast channel run by my wife, Sheila. In her podcasts, she interviews ordinary people about their stories of things they've achieved, things they're interested in. And I was interviewed regarding my stamp collecting and my podcasts about stamp collecting. So if you'd like to have a listen to that, head on over to the All About You podcast. I'll put the link below and let us know what you think. Hello from Ourdadsstamps. For today's podcast, I thought I'd do something a little different. I received a package this morning of Spanish stamps, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to do an unpacking video. These stamps I bought from the auction site called Katawiki, and one of the benefits from Katawiki is you get a whole range of images to look at. So I have a pretty good idea what I'm actually going to get in this package, but there's nothing like seeing the real thing and getting the feel of the stamps in person. So let's dive in. The first thing I would say is I won the auction on Thursday night, paid for the stamps early Friday morning, and they were posted in Barcelona on Friday, and today is Monday, and I received them this morning, which is quite amazing from Spanish Post Office and Gold Star to Correos España for the service. They were sent certificado, which means they had to be signed for, and normally that takes longer, so to get them over a weekend I was very impressed. So let's have a look what we've got. The first thing when I'm opening packages of stamps is try and do it very carefully. I have been caught out where there's been so much sellotape attached that I've actually ended up damaging some stamps in trying to get them out. So what I generally do now is carefully, with a Stanley knife, carefully cut into the side, but checking as I'm going that I'm not actually cutting into in this case into the album. So this is actually a stamp album, and once I've made sure I've avoided the covers, then it should be fairly simple to get into. And as you can see, it's been well packaged in brown paper, but then with bubble wrap inside it, so it's a good sign that these have been well looked after. So here we have the album. Here we go. So that's a bit worrying, the pages are empty. Right, here we go then. So we start off with what appears to be Queen Isabel II stamps from the 1860 set. There's a huge range of the pale oranges here, which are unfortunately pretty worthless, so that's a shame, but these, the 12 quartos, has a reasonable value, around about £15–20 on Stanley Gibbons, and the blue ones also, so that's a good start. And some more of a slightly later set. Early Spanish stamps, they seem to change the sets around about every couple of years. And I understand this was in an attempt to cut back on fraud, but it just gave the fraudsters more things to copy, unfortunately. Nothing hugely value, I would say. I guess these look a bit more interesting that they're in mounts rather than just putting the stock card. The £1. Okay, and the dos reals as well. Are a decent price, decent value for those, and considering I've got 4 of them, that's a nice set. One thing to notice with Spanish stamps, this is the £1 brown on green. It has a catalogue value used of £110. Now the problem with this stamp is these markings here were actually a cancellation of the stamp, so this hasn't been postally used, it's been cancelled, and those are worth considerably less than the used value. So unfortunately, when you see certain stamps in early Spain that have got that sort of markings on them, they are not used, they're not cancelled. Now, I've had this before on previous sets, and again this is a reasonably valued stamp. So current stage, I'm only a few pages in, and I'm very happy with what there is. Let's see what else we've got. Here's another example of the cancelled stamp. As I said, this hasn't been used, this has been cancelled to excess stock that was cancelled and disposed of. However, a nice little selection there. Again, when I'm looking through these, it's always the high values that attract, are generally the most valuable. But it's not always the case, and my normal tack when I'm opening a set of stamps or a package of stamps is to have a quick look through and pick out odd things that look interesting, but then go back and look in more detail and value each stamp individually to see what I've got. Now here's another thing to look out for in Spanish stamps, if I can get this out. Oh no, this is a decent stamp. Sorry, I thought it was one with the punched hole cancel. This bit here looks like it's a punched hole, but it's not. It's just the way that the postmarkers come out. This 20 cents, the escudo is, it's okay. It's decent values. When I say decent values, for me, anything that's catalogued over £10 is a decent value. You know, I'm sure for other people that's not particularly special, but at my level of collecting and selling, then that's a decent value. And as I said before, look, there's 3 more that are cancelled stamps, and a load more on this page as well down here. So you do have to look out for those, and you do have to be careful not to get carried away in thinking that it's worth a small fortune. Something doesn't look quite right on this stamp. If you look at these two stamps, these are both 10-cent stamps, and this is something to be aware of, and I'm not quite sure yet, but if we put these stamps side by side, the stamp on the right is several millimeters shorter than the stamp on the left. Now that's often an indication that it's been reperfed or is a fake stamp. At this stage I would have to look in more details to see which one of those it is. The colour is very bright on the smaller stamp. The perforations at the bottom aren't particularly clear anyway, so if it's been reperfed it's then been badly trimmed. But yeah, I need to have a look at that stamp in a bit more detail to see why it's shorter, and I suspect it's been doctored or is a fake. Several more of the cancelled stamps, unfortunately. This is the other type of cancel that you need to look out for on Spanish stamps. You can probably see it better on this one. If you look closely, there's a hole been punched out of the stamp. These are Telegraph stamps. They've been used on telegrams rather than in postal use. And like the cancelled ones, like these ones here, they're worth a lot less than used stamps or mint stamps, as this looks like. Just a quick check the value of this stamp. Yeah, if this stamp was mint, it'd be £130. Used is 65, but with that cancel on, it's probably a couple of pound at most. So yeah, if you're collecting Spanish stamps, then certainly look out for things like that, and they're very common. Here's some more examples of the same thing. Again, as you can see, with the hole punched through the middle. Would be worth a lot have the hole not been there, but unfortunately with the hole it takes it down from 60, 80 pounds to a few pounds. Same with these two, look. So some of the these are First Republic sets of the peace figure and justice figure. These came out in about 1873, 1874, and the high value ones are worth decent money. Unfortunately I only go up to 50 cents. I think this is 50 cents yellow. Again, it's £10–12, which is not to be sniffed at, but I'm quite happy with that. Now I've stopped on this stamp because it looks interesting, and I'll scan this in a bit later so you get a better view of it. This is the justice figure that was produced in 1874, and it's the 4 peseta rose. Now at first glance this looks a perfectly decent stamp. There's a heavy hinge mark on the back. There's no gum on it, but there doesn't appear any postmark. The marks you can see at the top are actually where it's like it's been creased or folded at some point. However, on closer inspection, what you can see this image as a yellowy mark there is actually this hinge, and this stamp has been punched for use in the Telegraph. So it's got a hole punch in it, but it's been crudely covered up in an attempt to make it look like a real stamp. And had that been an unused stamp, you're looking at close on £1,000. But because it's got the punched hole cancel, again, a few pounds only. And there's two of them. This one's an obvious punched hole cancel. The other one, as I said, it's been crudely attempted to cover it up. But there we go. Moving on to King Alfonso XII. There's, again, many sets of his. They seem to continue to produce new sets every year or every couple of years. And a good selection. Plenty of duplicates. But these, as you see, lots of punched hole cancel ones. That one isn't. But also a couple of normal looking stamps. Not hugely valuable though in this particular set. These are quite a common set. There are different crowns, and actually you can see on that one, possibly see on that one, that's a different crown to those. But really these are only worth anything if they're in blocks of 4. And then some more punched cancelled stamps. Again, this one, another one that's been rather crudely covered up. And as you can see, once you take it out of the mount, then there's a definite hole there, which is a great shame, because had that not been cancelled, it's another £400 stamp. But with the punched hole, not really worth a lot. And it's not just the expensive ones that have punched hole as well. This is a 10 centimos worth 50p anyway. So with the punched hole cancel, it's virtually worthless. And in this particular one, there's many different shades. More punched hole cancels. The 1 peseto I think is reasonable. No, maybe not. It's only a few pound, so nothing special. Then we come on to Alfonso XIII. He actually came to the throne on his birth, as his father had died just previously. And as you can see from the images on the stamp, he's a very young king. And he remained on the throne until 1931, although it was quite a turbulent reign. He was, however, nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts with the European War Council during the First World War. And I believe he's the only reigning monarch to be nominated for that. But this is a nice set. I've had this set almost complete at one point, and it is quite a nice set to collect. And once again, when you get up to the higher values, that's where the higher denominations, that's where the value comes into it. But only the 10 peseta, really. The 4% peseta, this is punched hole anyway, so it's next to not really worth anything. But in a normal one of these used would be about £50. The 10 peseta about 130. Lots more if it was mint. So obviously, with something like this is valued at mint £750. So if you're an unscrupulous person, you could get another 4% stamp with the hole punched in a different place, and between the two fill out that hole with an actual stamp, regum it, and it would look, to all intents and purposes, like a real stamp, and you've made yourself £700. Moving on, there's lots of duplications, not particularly valuable set, again, until you get to the really high values. But in this set, even the high values are nothing special. There are lots of variations in colour with this one, so that makes it a bit more interesting. But even the one passator there, it's a few pence. It's nothing special. This is a Don Quixote set, and unfortunately I've only got the first 4 low denominations, which don't have a lot of value. If you can get hold of the higher value ones of these from 1 passator upwards, you're looking at hundreds of pounds. So well worth it, but as yet I haven't come across any of those. Another very common set. These can be worth something if they're mint, but used, they're easy to come by and not particularly valuable at all. These have been overprinted by the looks of it. Let's see if I can find Corioero. I will have to have a look at those. It's not something I know I'm familiar with. There's 4 of them, so it could well be a whole set. It could be just a small selection. Something to have a look into. Another set of Alfonso, which are, again, the lower denominations are not particularly valuable. However, there are a lot of variations, perforation variations, shade variations. They're worth looking at in a bit more detail, and you can probably see without looking too deeply that these two are very different. Both 15 centimetres, but one is on green paper, one is on white paper. So and we have got the higher values of these, which is good. That's the one passator, not particularly great. The 4 passators is again reasonable amount, but not hugely valuable. And the 10 passator, probably £20-ish. So not to be sniffed at. One thing to look out for on these stamps, they started in about 1900. Well, let's choose one you can see easily. Put in control numbers on the back. Okay, and these are on every single stamp. You can't really see it from this angle. Again, I'll scan it in to give a better picture. These are on every single stamp, and if you find one with the control number just 00000 6 zeros, or A followed by 6 zeros, they're specimen stamps and are worth quite a lot more than the ordinary ones. So it's definitely worth looking on the back of these stamps as well as on the front. Finally we come to not sure what that one is. That looks an unusual stamp, possibly not a postal stamp. These sets were for transatlantic flights, issued as aero stamps. Not hugely valuable, but nice looking stamps nevertheless, multicoloured, which always makes them look more interesting. And I've got everything up to the 4 passator, and the 4 passator is the one that's worth money. That's not unusual for these sort of things. And finally, a couple of postal cards. I'll have to practice my Spanish reading those later on. I always like looking at things like this. Although this probably has very little value, it's interesting to see what people were writing about. And this was in 1887, which does make it even more interesting. So yes, I'll have a look at these stamps and or these cards and see what they're like. So there we have it. Nothing that's going to make me jump up and down and think I've made a fortune, but there's certainly enough there to cover the cost of what I paid for it, and I'm very happy with what I've got. What I'll do now is I'll spend some time looking at it in more detail, breaking it down into sets, and try and sell them on to make a little bit of money to buy some new stamps for my collection. During this video I've talked about stamps that have been doctored to appear to be more valuable. I just want to say that there's no suggestion that the vendor of this lot was in any way trying to mislead me. I was fully aware of what I was buying and I'm very happy with a lot of stamps I bought. I merely wanted to highlight that these are the sort of things that can happen and that you need to be aware of. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. As I said, it was slightly different from normal. If you have enjoyed it and would like to see more unpackaging, then please leave a comment below and I can do more of them when I receive more items. Once again, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and see you again in 2 weeks' time on Ourdadsstamps podcast.